Let's get now to this new Quinnipiac poll just out yesterday. And joining us now is longtime Democratic consultant guru and an FOJ, friend of John, and our good friend. He's like family to us, Ben Tribbett. Ben, good to have you with us.
Good morning, John.
Now, you can follow Ben on Twitter at Not Larry Sabato, which every time I even pull up his tweet, it makes me laugh, at Not Larry Sabato. You can follow him on Twitter. Ben, okay, so we're on a month ago, and both of us said Northam was in trouble. I predicted right there Perriello was going to win. I think I still hold to that. This new poll just came out for the first time, showing Perriello in the lead. What do you make of it?
Well, it's a big development in the race. And it's a big development because so much of Ralph Northam's campaign and plan revolves around the fact that everyone in the state has endorsed him of any import, right? Almost every elected official, all the party officials, everyone's lined up and endorsed Ralph Northam. Well, now that Tom Perriello has taken the lead, the risk factor of people starting to jump ship is humongous. And it has a chance of completely cracking this race wide open by collapsing the Northam support, because a lot of people are going to start looking at this saying, well, Tom Perriello is going to be the next governor. So why am I endorsing Ralph Northam? And once one person cracks, a whole bunch are going to go off. So this is like rats off the ship. Northam has to keep him on the ship long enough to prove that he can win this race, or his support is just going to start to collapse.
I agree with that. Now, this is interesting, Ben Tribbett, because Dr. Ralph Northam, current lieutenant governor, has gotten an amazing array of establishment Democrat endorsements throughout the state. They boast, in fact, that they have every congressman except Jerry Connolly, who bailed on them, and they have virtually every state senator and I think every Democratic member of the House of Representatives. So they tout this constantly, all this backing, but you're right. Connolly was the first one to say no. He saw something. He backed Perriello, right? I tried to get him on my show. He wouldn't come on.
I think Connolly's actually neutral.
That's right. Connolly wouldn't back Northam, but he backed Justin Fairfax. Sorry,
That's
I got
right.
that. Yeah, thanks for clearing that up. But everybody else has backed Ralph in the entire state on the Democratic side. So what you're saying is this could break the dam, and then there could be a flood.
That's right. And so what Northam needs right now is to show people that he is that he can win this race. And believe me, John, you're not the only person who's predicting that Tom Perriello is going to win. Now, I still think this is very early. I think that Ralph Northam absolutely has paths to win this election, but his paths all go through a late move, and you can't make a late move if people are starting to jump ship on you. His 2013 race, Ralph made a very late move against Anish Chopra and won easily. And I think that many people on Ralph's campaign want to repeat 2013 all over again. But this is a very, very different race. And in 2013, part of why a late move was possible is because people weren't tuned in until it was very late. In this race, voters are paying very close attention. And the risk is that this becomes more like the Cree Deeds race in 2009, where the polls showed everyone even. Cree started to take the lead. People started making endorsements of Cree. He got the Washington Post. All of a sudden, everyone was endorsing Cree, and before you knew it, it snowballed, and Cree won by 24 points. That is what we're on the cusp of if the Northam campaign doesn't find a way to jolt Tom's momentum immediately.
How would they do that, Ben?
I think they've got to take a strong look at going in for voter communication now and starting to open up their plan. I mean, we're getting close to when that's going to happen anyway. But if I were the Northam campaign, I'd be thinking, maybe we need to get out our first TV ad or our first set of mail pieces immediately, and try to introduce Ralph and make sure that the next poll that comes out is not in the ballpark of this one. Because if they could get another poll that comes out that shows this one was off, I think all is going to be fine, and they're going to be able to have a tight race all the way to the wire. But if the next poll comes out and says, say, for example, Perriello's up 9 or 10, this race is just going to be over. It's just his support is going to collapse.
I agree with that. So let me ask you this. I've been very critical of the Ralph Northam for Governor campaign as being much too reticent and not taking clear positions on things that matter. I've also criticized them for what I think is running away from Terry McAuliffe's jobs record in Virginia, which is hard to argue with. He's done a fabulous job, and I don't really understand what their campaign is trying to do. They got a couple good people in it, David Turner, Clark Mercer. These are smart people, but it seems like there's, I don't know if it's a fear or an apprehension or an indecision, but they just don't seem to be taking this on in a way that is very inspiring. Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, I think that they're disorganized. John, yesterday when you announced that I was going to be on your show this morning to talk about it, both campaigns called me to try to lobby what they thought about the poll. And the Northam campaign offered me up a bunch of numbers that, they wanted me to say on the air this morning. And I asked a couple of follow-up questions, and they were supposed to send me more information. They never did. And so, it makes it, I can't even use the information that they wanted me to use this morning because they never sent me the information. So I think that part of it is there's just a level of disorganization in any statewide campaign, but it's particularly bad right now in the Northam campaign because they're really struggling. When you have everyone supporting you, let's be honest, John, a lot of these people that are for Ralph Northam are high maintenance. And so there's upside to having everyone's endorsement, and there's downside also. And the downside is you got to put a lot more work into it. Tom Perriello's team has a lot more of their time freed up to campaign because they don't have as many of these high-maintenance activists hanging all over them. So I just think that this is a race that is dangerously for Ralph Northam going in the wrong direction right now. And I will say this also. The governor, I think, probably has at least 95% approval rating among Democrats. It might even be higher.
98%.
98% is what the Northam poll said. I'm going to say in reality it's at least 95%. I don't think that that's a 95% that is really strong. In that, do they approve of what Terry's doing? Yes. But the fact that only 20% are supporting his lieutenant governor to be the candidate for governor tells you that support is very wide and not very deep. And part of that, I think, revolves around that when you look at Terry's number from 2009, when he was contested in the primary, he got 24%. People like what Terry's doing as governor that are Democrats. They're not necessarily attached to him. He didn't come up through Virginia politics. He doesn't have a deep, deep organization. Mm-hmm. He has an organization that's very top-heavy. Mm-hmm. And I think that is affecting Ralph Northam because, A, the governor is not substantially strong amongst how deep that support is. He has support. All the Democrats support him. But how deep it is, it's not that strong. And you put on top of that the fact that, Ralph Northam's been a doctor who he's been to political events around the state. Again, the top brass tops is what we would call it. I'm not sure how deep into the grassroots he is. And here's just a number that I'll give you an example. my understanding is the Northam campaign, is going to report a large number of individual donors that gave after in this period after Tom Perriello announced, most of which are in Virginia. Well, if you take the numbers they're talking about and you look at it within the statewide primary electorate and then divide the support that Northam has right now to what you would expect his vote total to be, at least 1 in 4, 1 in 3 Northam voters have already donated to his campaign. And that's an amazing stat, but it also tells you that he's not penetrated past the core grass tops into the grassroots of voters that are going to participate in this primary but are not that politically involved or active. And that's a big problem because in a primary, you first have to get votes.
All right, so how does that...
lieutenant governor should be deeper.
So, Ben, how do you think that will contrast with what Perriello's financial backing will be when everything comes out early next week? I think it comes out April 17th.
I don't know. See, I don't know what Perriello will report. I'm not sure if he will be as heavy in state versus out state. I wouldn't be surprised if he got some more support out of state.
Does that matter?
No, it doesn't matter because money is money.
Money is money, right? So whether he got it from 5 donors or 5,000, what's the difference?
Well, I think that Perriello will show a lower percentage of his overall vote right now having donated because he's done a better job of getting into the grassroots so far. And he's doing town hall meetings. He's meeting regular voters. Ralph needs to get out and do that. And as of right now, we're in April. There's still time, but the time is ticking down.
All right, so let's get...
And I'm not seeing the level of activity stepping up yet.
What's the pathway to a Ralph Northam victory in your judgment, Ben Tribbett?
I think they have to go all in immediately. I think they've got to right this ship, and keep some of the jittery support they have from jumping ship.
The other thing you mentioned is that a lot of people look at the Chopra race where Dr. Northam broke late, as I predicted that would happen. But there's two things very different. Number one, Anish Chopra was just not a good candidate in my judgment. He was just not a very likable guy, opposite of Perriello. You meet Perriello, even if you don't agree with him, he's kind of a very likable chap. So I think you don't have that same dynamic. Plus, Ben, I don't care what they say, there was a ton of Republicans and independents that crossed over in that Democratic lieutenant governor primary because they couldn't vote for E.W. Jackson and they wanted a better alternative than Chopra. And so he got tons of Republicans in that. I don't care how they deny that. I'm telling you that was real. They called into my show for weeks. And I crossed over and I voted for him, and so did my entire family and a bunch of my friends. Well, that's gone now because you have a competitive Republican primary on the same day, so that's gone. So now they're competing just with their base, and I think that's the other misnomer there. And they've never really owned up to the fact that part of their victory strategy over Chopra came from independents and Republicans that didn't want E.W. Jackson, and they saw Ralph Northam as a better alternative because they knew Jackson would lose.
Well, also, I would say, John, Ralph was at that point identified as a moderate person that independents and Republicans wanted to cross into the primary to support. And I think that is more reflective of who he is. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. That's, as you pointed out in your show, that's not what he's running as.
Right. That's it. I mean, that's the whole thing. Okay. How does Tom Perriello win this race?
Well, Tom Perriello is on track to win this race right now. I mean, I think that what Tom Perriello has to do is close the deal. When you look at the numbers where the race is right now, there's still a lot of undecided voters. There's a lot of undecided, particularly in Northern Virginia. And he's going to have to close the deal because that when the TV ads start, the Northam campaign is going to hit him on choice, on guns, on some of the votes he took in Congress. because, as you know, John, Ralph is now the uber super progressive. And when he hits Tom on those things, Tom's going to have to respond. If he can respond in a way that can connect with people as well as he's connected with people at a grassroots level, he'll be fine. But that is still the biggest risk that's hanging out there, is if the Northam campaign just has a lot more resources and can go on television soon and really hit Perriello hard. I think that he is vulnerable on those votes. So, I think that's his biggest risk at this point. But I would say at this point this race does lean towards Tom Perriello. It was a toss-up before. The last 3 months have moved it away from being a toss-up. The straw polls, Northam is winning the straw polls. That's indicative of the people that are backing him, that he has all these activists and has all the party leadership. But when you're winning the straw polls and losing the regular polls, that's never a good sign.
Never a good sign. Okay, Ben, let's get to so just let me sum this up. If everything stays the same, Perriello wins, right? He's on track to win. So what you're saying is that Ralph Northam now, the underdog, as I've said he is, they have to do something to change the trajectory of this race, or Perriello is going to be the nominee. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, and I will say Ralph Northam did have one piece of good news that came out last week, which is the debate schedule. I'm not sure if you had seen it, John, but
no.
They announced a number of debates and joint appearances around the state, and there were a lot of them. I think there's 8 total that are debates or joint appearances. That's very, very good for Ralph Northam. And it's good for Ralph Northam because if there were only 1 or 2 events, a lot more people would be tuned into those, and it would give Perriello an opportunity to introduce himself. When you have 7 or 8, it spreads out the people who will tune in to different events.
Okay.
So you can do well in one, not as well in the other, and the stakes are not as high. And there's a lot of risk when Perriello introduced himself with high stakes on that. My understanding is the Perriello campaign did ask for more debates, which I think was a big strategic error. But that's about the only piece of good news that Dr. Northam's gotten this week.
All right, let's get to the Republican side, where Ed Gillespie maintaining a commanding lead over Corey Stewart amongst Republicans, 28%, 12% for Stewart. Wagner, last place, 7%, 51% undecided. We estimate that Gillespie's going to spend $1.8 million, $2 million in advertising in the final 3 weeks. Is this race over, or is there a pathway for one of these other challengers to Ed Gillespie?
I mean, that race is about over because none of the challengers are going to have the resources to make a fight with Ed Gillespie.
Right.
I think that it'll be more exciting to see on primary night, can Corey Stewart even carry his own county of Prince William?
Right.
Because his campaign's really cratered.
Right. Now, he's got negative on Ed, and, you're a long-time, very successful political analyst and consultant, Ben. And isn't it true that sometimes you go negative and you go over the top and you not only get diminishing returns, but it backfires? Is that happening now with the Stewart campaign?
I'm not sure if it's happening there or not. It certainly is true that does happen. I think that Corey's actually suffering more from being unknown downstate. And he's trying to do sort of cheap moments, like he is with this dressing up like a Confederate soldier to try to build his name ID, because it's getting close to the primary and he has no name ID.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of Northern Virginia, it's very hard to run out of a political base when you're not liked in your own political base, and he's not popular outside of Prince William County. He doesn't have good relationships. He doesn't have endorsements, and it's just a really tough road for Corey.
And I think many of us, like I did, thought that the Wagner campaign would get a little more traction than it is. He's at 7% according to this poll. What do you think happened there?
Well, Hampton Roads is a tough area to run out of. It always has been when you're in a contested primary, because the turnout's low. It's not a big percentage of the electorate. And I don't think anyone knows who Frank Wagner is outside of Hampton Roads.
Mm-hmm.
So he, again, has not done a lot of voter communication in the rest of the state. So it's possible Frank Wagner could get to second place when this is all said and done after he's communicated with people. But we're getting late in the game here, and if he's going to make a move again, I know Frank has some personal resources. If he wants to be governor, now's the time. He got to cut himself a $5 million check and go on the air.
Well, time is running out, no doubt. This is the John Fredericks Radio Network. I got a couple more minutes with longtime Democratic and overall political consultant and analyst Ben Tribbett. You can follow Ben at Not Larry Sabato, at Not Larry Sabato. Ben, couple more minutes. Other good news, I guess, here for the Democrats is whether it's Perriello or Ralph Northam as the nominee, both of them have now a double-digit lead over the frontrunner for the Republican nomination, Ed Gillespie. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's sort of what we talked about before, John.
Right.
It's going to be a big year for the Democrats. I saw that John Whitbeck was on Twitter questioning this poll and saying that all the polling's been wrong in Virginia. The race might be tighter than this at the moment, but it's headed in that direction. I think the poll actually picked up the direction this race is going to head. And the reason it picked that up was it showed that the Democrats were a bigger chunk of the electorate than they normally are. That's not a polling error. That's what happens when your side has the energy.
Right.
And so John Whitbeck's case was, well, if the Democrats don't have this big of a party advantage in the state, and he's right, they don't. But when you have this kind of energy that's going on right now because there's a Republican president who's controversial, that's what happens. That's why waves happen. So I wouldn't compare what the party composition was during the Obama years with what the party composition will be in the Trump years.
Okay, Ben, I got one more minute. Final question. I know that's not in the polling numbers here, but let's go to the lieutenant governor's race on the Democratic side. 3 candidates, Susan Platt, Justin Fairfax, Gene Rossi. That was not included in this poll. Right now, snapshot, what do you see going on there?
Again, all the candidates basically unknown. I think Susan Platt has some built-in advantages as the only woman running. She's run her campaign's sort of running very well right now. Justin Fairfax trying to figure out how to respond to her. And I don't think either candidate, I think Justin will show that he raised more money in the first quarter. I'm not sure that either one of them raised enough money to make a substantial impact on voters yet. And so we're looking at most of the LG candidates staying basically unknown through the primary, and this is going to be a guerrilla fight on primary day.
All right, so right now you're saying it's going to be close?
It's going to be close. I think Susan Platt has a built-in advantage. You know, the Fairfax campaign will say the reason she had the lead in the last poll was polling bias, that people could pick up that she was a woman in the poll, and so women that wanted a woman just selected her. And I think there's some truth to that. But you know what, John? There's also bias on Election Day because guess what they can see on the ballot? They also can pick out a woman on the ballot.
All right, we're out of time. I want to thank Ben Tribbett for being with us and for his analysis saying right now, if nothing changes, Perriello is on track to be the Democratic nominee for governor, but there is a pathway for Northam. But Ben Tribbett says you better get on the stick and you better get on it right now or you're going to lose. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. You can follow Ben on Twitter at Not Larry Sabato. Hey, Ben, good to have you with us. Thank you.
Good to talk with you, John.
All right, always good to have Ben Tribbett with us. And Ben, my definite guru. Guy's very smart. You got anybody you want to do analysis for your campaign, he's the guy and he tells it like it is. Plus, he's a friend of the family. And we love Ben, so he's a good guy. This is the John Fredericks Radio Network. Stay with us.